To understand why a queen was at war with her own family for the soul of her kingdom, let's go back just 1 year, 1567. For Mary Stuart, this was the year her world came crashing down. A storm of political and personal crisis saw her, the anointed Queen of Scotland and a former Queen of France, become a prisoner in her own realm. The chain of events was dizzying. It began with the sensational murder of her deeply unpopular husband, Lord Darnley. Suspicion immediately fell on the ambitious James Hepburn, the Earl of Bothwell. And when the Queen married Bothwell, the man most of Scotland believed to be the killer, the Protestant lords had the pretext they had been waiting for. As you might have guessed, this marriage was a political catastrophe. It was seen as an unforgivable insult to the crown, and it handed her enemies the moral high ground. The rebellion that followed saw Mary's forces face the Confederate lords at Carberry Hill. But there was no battle. Her army dissolved, and her new husband fled into exile, and Mary was taken captive. She was brought to the island fortress of Lochleven Castle, and forced to sign away her crown. Under duress, isolated, and with her life under threat, she abdicated. Her infant son was crowned King James VI, and her Protestant half-brother, James Stuart, the Earl of Moray, was named regent. For nearly a year, Mary was a prisoner. At just 25, a monarch who had known the heights of power was silenced. Her story seemed over, but Mary was resilient. On May 2, 1568, she made a daring escape from the island castle. Once free, she became a living banner for everyone who opposed the new regime. To her followers, she was the rightful queen, illegally deposed by a faction of power-hungry lords. Her most powerful new allies were the Hamiltons, one of Scotland's most influential families. For Mary, their support was a coup, but the Hamiltons also had a distant claim to the throne, and saw in Mary their best chance to oust the Regent Moray, their bitter rival. Within days, what many historians think was an unstoppable army had rallied to her side. Nobles, lords, and their followers flocked to her banner, swelling her ranks to between 6,000 and 8,000 men, a force that dwarfed the regent's army. Her objective was clear: reach the mighty Dumbarton Castle. The Loyalist stronghold offered safety, a base to wage war, and a vital escape route to France to rally more support. With her army gathered, Mary began her march. The Queen's men were on the move, and the Scottish Civil War was about to begin. News of Mary's escape and her growing army sent shockwaves through the government in Glasgow. The Earl of Moray was, in the words of one contemporary, sore amazed. He was in a terrible position. With only around 4,500 men, he was badly outnumbered. Momentum was with the charismatic Queen. Many would have retreated, but Moray was a calculating and ruthless military strategist. He knew that letting Mary reach Dumbarton would be a disaster, giving her an almost unbeatable base of operations. The stakes couldn't have been higher. He had to stop her, and he had to stop her now. Despite his inferior numbers, Moray had key advantages. His army was better organized and led by some of Scotland's most seasoned commanders. His greatest asset was Sir William Kirkcaldy, who was a well-known tactician. Moray decided to take a huge gamble. Instead of retreating, he would hold Glasgow, blocking Mary's most direct route to Dumbarton and forcing a battle on ground he chose. A race began. Mary's army, nominally commanded by the Earl of Argyll, marched from Hamilton. Their plan was to bypass Moray's force by swinging south of Glasgow and making a dash for the coast. But Moray anticipated this. He knew the key was the terrain just south of the city, a collection of small hills and narrow lanes. Specifically, he had to seize the high ground of Langside Hill, which commanded the very road Mary needed to take. On the advice of Kirkcaldy, Moray made a brilliant tactical move. To get to the hill before Mary's larger army, he ordered 200 of his hagbutters. These were soldiers with early muskets, to be mounted two to a horse behind his cavalry. This mobile infantry raced ahead to secure the vital position. As they sped towards the village of Langside, Moray marched the rest of his army south. He had won the race. His forces seized the high ground and arranged themselves for the coming storm. He had set a perfect trap. The field that would decide Mary's fate was a small village called Langside, now swallowed by the city of Glasgow. Moray's army held the high ground on Langside Hill. Below them, the main road ran through the Langloan, a long, narrow lane flanked by walls and cottages. It was here that Kirkcaldy sprang his trap. He hid his 200 hagbutters behind the walls and hedges, creating a fateful tunnel through which Mary's army had to advance. From a nearby hill, Mary watched as her army prepared to attack. Her commander, the Earl of Argyll, was reportedly ill that day, another piece of misfortune in a campaign that was full of it. The battle opened with an exchange of cannon fire. Then the Queen's vanguard, 2,000 men under Lord Claude Hamilton, charged forward. Their goal was to smash Moray's right wing and take the high ground. They stormed into the narrow confines of the Langloan, and then the trap was sprung. From the walls and cottages on both sides, Kirkcaldy's hidden marksmen opened fire. The volley was devastating. The crack of muskets and clouds of black powder smoke tore through the charging ranks. Men who were already breathless from running uphill were thrown into utter confusion. And yet they fought on with incredible courage, pushing through the ambush and nearly breaking Moray's line. But Kirkcaldy was watching. He committed his reserves, and the full weight of Moray's army crashed down on the struggling vanguard. Pikemen advanced in a wall of steel, driving the attackers back. At the same time, the Regent's cavalry charged into their faltering lines. The battle, for all its ferocity, was shockingly short. It was over in less than an hour. The ambush had worked perfectly. The heart of Mary's army was broken in the Langloan. The rest of her forces, seeing their vanguard destroyed, lost their nerve and fled. The battle had become a rout. Moray, showing remarkable control, ordered his men to spare the fleeing soldiers and take prisoners. Even so, around 150 of Mary's supporters were killed. In stark contrast, Moray's losses were astoundingly light. Some reports claim he only lost a single man. From her vantage point, Mary watched her army and her last hope completely disintegrate. As the last of her army scattered, Mary Stuart lost all courage which she had never done before, and took so great a fear. Her cause wasn't just lost, it was annihilated. Her last army was gone, and that was left for the flight. With a few loyal followers, she fled the battlefield. She turned south, beginning a desperate 90-mile ride for her life. She later wrote of the ordeal.
I have suffered injuries, calumnies, captivity, hunger, cold, heat, flying, without knowing whither. And then lay on the hard ground, having only sour milk to drink and oatmeal to eat, without bread.
She found refuge at Dundrennan Abbey, near the English border. Here she faced a fateful choice. Her advisors begged her to sail for France, where she could expect Catholic support. But Mary made a different decision. She would cross into England and throw herself on the mercy of her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I. It was a staggering gamble, born of desperation and a fatally naive faith in the bonds between monarchs. She believed Elizabeth, a fellow queen, would help her. On May 16th, just 3 days after Langside, she took a small boat and landed at Workington in England. She would never see Scotland again. She arrived not as a sovereign, but as a problem. Elizabeth, wary of Mary's strong claim to the English throne, had her detained. Her flight from Scotland had not led to freedom, but to 19 years of English captivity. The Battle of Langside, though brief, was one of the most decisive in Scottish history. For Mary, the defeat was final. It shattered her dream of reclaiming her throne, and began the long, tragic final act of her life, which would end on an executioner's block in 1587. For Scotland, the battle cemented the victory of the Protestant lords. The reign of her son, King James VI, was now secure, setting him on the path that would eventually unite the crowns of Scotland and England. The Protestant Reformation was here to stay, and Scotland's future was now tied not to Catholic France, but to Protestant England. Today, a monument in Glasgow marks the spot, a silent reminder of the day a queen's last stand determined a nation's destiny. Langside was more than a battle. It was the violent, tragic end to Mary, Queen of Scots' dramatic rule in her homeland. The question that echoes throughout history is whether any other choice could have saved her. So what do you think? If Mary had fled to France instead of England, could she have ever truly reclaimed her crown? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. If you want to learn more about the turbulent life of the Scottish Queen, check out our video on murder, matrimony, and Mary, Queen of Scots. And for more stories, battles, legends, and folklore revolving around Celtic history, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching.